Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely change how you look at your kitchen. We are taking that overwhelming, sometimes totally chaotic chore of daily cooking, and we're turning it into a streamlined, low-stress, highly effective system. So if you have ever felt just completely defeated by dinner time, trust me, you're in the right place.
Let's set the scene here, and I'm willing to bet this is going to sound super familiar. It's 6:15 p.m. You literally just walked through the door, your bag is probably still on your shoulder, you haven't even sat down yet, and someone is already asking you, "So what's for dinner?" Right? That is the exact moment that just breaks people. You end up staring into the refrigerator like it somehow owes you an answer. Why is this so exhausting? And honestly, what separates the home cook who panics in this moment from the professional who just easily turns out a great meal? Well, the secret here is that restaurant-quality food, it isn't about overly complex recipes at all. It is entirely about mastering simple systems and foundations.
So here's our game plan for organizing all that culinary chaos. We're going to start with Phase 1, prep and precision. Then we'll move right into Phase 2, the mastery of heat. After that, Phase 3, building layers of flavor. And we'll wrap it all up with Phase 4, weeknight survival systems.
Let's dive right into Phase 1, prep and precision.
Now, take a look at this term, mise en place. It's this classic French professional culinary concept, and it basically translates to having everything in its place. The rule here is simple. Before you apply a single spark of heat to your food, you absolutely must have a plan. You got to gather all your ingredients, measure them out, and have all your equipment right there within arm's reach. Why? Because doing this completely prevents you from doing that frantic mid-cook kitchen sprint, digging around for the apple cider vinegar while your garlic is literally burning on the stove. When you get your mise en place right, you are focused, you're relaxed, and believe it or not, you're actually having fun.
And speaking of prep, let's talk about this number, 30%. This beautifully illustrates why cooking, and especially baking, can feel so incredibly inconsistent. When you measure ingredients like flour by volume, like using a standard measuring cup, the actual amount you scoop up can vary by up to 30%, depending on how packed it is. Think about that. That is a massive margin of error. And it's exactly why the pros rely on a digital scale to measure their ingredients in grams. 100 grams is always exactly 100 grams. Seriously, making the switch to a scale, it gives you stress-free, dead-on accuracy every single time.
Okay, another huge part of preparation is your tools. And we need to bust a massive kitchen myth right here, right now. A lot of folks genuinely think dull knives are safer. Well, fact check. They absolutely are not. A dull knife forces you to apply way more pressure to cut through your ingredients. You end up sort of sawing, ripping, and tearing at your food, which actually puts you in a much more dangerous position. Why? Because the blade is incredibly likely to just slip right off the food and catch your fingers. A sharp surgical blade, on the other hand, just glides right through those ingredients with zero resistance, making it infinitely safer to use.
Okay, moving right along to Phase 2, the mastery of heat.
So the real secret here is perfectly captured when we compare the amateur approach to the professional approach. The typical, chaotic way most of us cook at home involves pulling wet chicken or steak straight from the packaging and just tossing it right into a pan. What happens? That surface moisture instantly turns to steam, which completely drops the temperature of the pan. The result is this gray, rubbery piece of meat that just violently sticks to the metal. No thanks. To cook like a pro, you have to pat your meat completely dry with a paper towel before it ever hits the heat. A dry surface allows the temperature to spike rapidly, and that triggers the Maillard reaction. That's the beautiful scientific process that gives you that visceral, golden brown sizzling crust that just pops right off the pan. It's a total game changer.
But keeping that meat dry is only half the battle. It needs the right environment. You've got to preheat to succeed. Hot pans and hot ovens prevent sticking and steaming. Think about it. If you toss cold vegetables onto a cold sheet tray and shove it in the oven, it goes through this long, sad transitional phase where the food is just slowly heating up and sweating out all its moisture. By the time it's actually cooked, it's completely mushy. Preheating your cooking surfaces ensures that the searing and roasting process begins the absolute second your food makes contact.
And that brings us to this absolutely brilliant two-step process for those tough, fibrous vegetables, things like Brussels sprouts or broccoli. Step 1 is high-heat pan roasting. You want to sear them with plenty of oil because that oil acts as a conductor to drive deep, beautiful browning right onto those flat edges. But here's the catch. If you just keep roasting them like that, the outside is going to burn way before the inside actually gets tender. So you hit them with Step 2, the steam finish. You just cover the pan with a lid or even some foil, drop the heat down, and trap all that residual moisture. This gently softens the interior without turning the whole thing to mush. You get the absolute best of both worlds, a crispy, roasty outside and a perfectly tender inside.
All right, let's jump into phase 3, building layers of flavor.
We're going to run through some rapid-fire professional flavor rules here. Ready? First up, you must layer your salt throughout the entire cooking process. Don't just dump it all in at the very end, or you're going to end up with salty gravies sitting on top of completely bland meat. You salt the meat, then the vegetables, then the liquid. Next rule, toast your dry spices and your tomato paste right in the pan before you add any liquid. This kills that raw, tinny flavor and unlocks these incredibly deep, rich aromas. Third, add acid. Seriously, if a dish tastes a little flat, it probably doesn't need more salt. It needs a bright pop of citrus or a splash of vinegar just to wake up your palate. Fourth, never ever start a sauté with garlic. Garlic has a super high sugar content, so it burns incredibly fast. Cook your onions first, then toss the garlic in later. And finally, season your pasta water aggressively. It needs to taste like the ocean. If the pasta itself isn't seasoned, I promise you, the whole dish is going to fall flat.
And that brings us to our final section, Phase 4, Weeknight Survival Systems.
I really want you to consider this quote for a second. The problem is that by 6 p.m., you have already made hundreds of decisions today. Your brain is not lazy, it is full. I mean, wow, that is profoundly true, isn't it? Decision fatigue is a very real, heavily documented phenomenon. By the time dinner time rolls around, you have already spent your mental bandwidth on your job, your commute, your family. You absolutely do not need complicated recipes in this moment. What you need are ironclad systems.
Let's look at one of the absolute best systems out there, the freezer strategy. Once a month, on a Sunday when you actually do have a little bit of bandwidth, make a massive batch of soup or stew. Eat some for dinner, and then immediately freeze the rest in these flat 32-ounce deli containers. They stack perfectly in the freezer, and you can clearly see exactly what's inside. Think of this as an investment for what we call floor nights. You know those nights where you literally just want to lie down on the floor and give up? On those nights, you just pull a container out, heat it up in 7 minutes flat, and boom! You are eating a wholesome, intentional meal with absolutely zero decision-making required.
Now, for the nights when you really do have to cook, but you just want it to be painless, here is your ultimate cheat sheet. We've got 5 totally unmess-upable meals, the key trick for making each one work, and the active cooking time. First up, sheet pan thighs. A 425-degree oven does literally all the caramelization work for you in just 6 active minutes. Next, dump quesadillas. You just use cheese as the binder for whatever random leftover protein is sitting in your fridge. That takes about 11 minutes. Then there's one-pot pasta, where the starch from the pasta naturally thickens into this beautiful glossy sauce in 18 minutes. We also have the brilliant rotisserie chicken strategy, leveraging a cheap store-bought bird to feed a whole family in 12 minutes. And finally, the egg dinner. Think shakshuka or a quick frittata. It's fast, it's cheap protein, and it feels like a deliberate, upscale choice, all done in 15 minutes. Relying on these meals will drastically reduce your decision fatigue and leave you with minimal cleanup.
So we've walked through the mindset, the mastery of heat, building flavor, and those crucial survival systems. And I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. What will you prep today to save your sanity tomorrow? Whether it's taking just 5 minutes to sharpen your chef's knife, packing your leftover soup into a deli container, or just deciding right now that tonight is going to be an egg dinner night, implementing these foundational systems is exactly how you unlock true culinary freedom and peace of mind.